basically saying that the kids are not safe around Iman. She said Iman be smoking weed around the kids and be forgetting to feed them. One of the wildest parts of the allegations is Teyana says that Iman put the kids in a rideshare in Chicago and had them dropped off at the United Center Arena alone while he had a private driver.
The story begins on a quiet morning in New York City. One of those mornings where the streets move fast but feel strangely distant, almost muted, as if the entire world is holding its breath without knowing why. But inside Teyana Taylor's home, the silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, so heavy that it pressed down on her shoulders like invisible weight. She had barely slept the night before, pacing in slow circles across the wooden floor, replaying every argument, every message, every painful moment from the last few weeks. Today wasn't like any ordinary day. Today, her daughter would face the courtroom, the judge, the lawyers, the cameras, and worst of all, her own father, Iman Shumpert. No matter how much brokenness existed between the adults, she never imagined life would twist into something where her child had to stand against the man who once lifted her onto his shoulders, the man she adored. Teyana rubbed her palms together, the skin warm from anxiety, desperately wishing the fear inside her chest would ease even a little. But it didn't. It only grew tighter, heavier, louder. She stood by the counter, staring blankly at a half-full glass of water, when she heard soft footsteps down the hallway light, hesitant steps that made her heart clench. Her daughter walked into the room with a quiet aura, her eyes carrying a tiredness far too old for her young age. She wasn't just exhausted. She looked like she had been holding the weight of two grown people's emotional war inside her chest. Teyana gave the gentlest smile she could manage, but it faltered, because the second their eyes met, she knew her daughter was not okay. The little girl moved into her arms, hugging her tighter and longer than usual, as if she was afraid that once they stepped outside this house, nothing would ever be the same again. And she wasn't wrong. Later that morning, as the car rolled toward the courthouse, the silence between them felt thick, suffocating, like grief had filled the air. The usual noise of New York, the horns, the sirens, the chatter felt far away, like the world's volume had been turned down in respect for the pain sitting inside that car. Teyana kept glancing at her daughter, wanting to speak, wanting to say something comforting, something powerful, something motherly. But every time she opened her mouth, her voice failed her. She didn't want to lie. She didn't want to pretend. She didn't want to push her child to be strong when all she needed was safety. She simply reached over and held her hand. When they arrived at the courthouse, it was chaos. Cameras lined the sidewalks, reporters shouting, flashes exploding like tiny bursts of lightning. The moment Teyana opened the door, the paparazzi rushed forward, hungry for the pain of a family in crisis. Instinctively, she pulled her daughter close, shielding her body with her own. The girl's fingers trembled inside her mother's grasp, but she kept walking, small steps, but brave ones. People whispered, shouted questions, snapped pictures, but Teyana didn't spare them a glance. Today was not for them. Today was for the little girl whose heart had been pulled into many directions. Inside the courtroom, the air changed instantly. It felt colder, almost unforgiving, as if the walls themselves absorbed the pain of every family that had ever stood within them. And then she saw him, Iman, sitting across the room. Her daughter froze. It wasn't anger in her eyes, not hatred, not bitterness. It was disappointment so deep it made her look older than her years. Teyana gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Iman's expression was unreadable, though there was a flash regret, maybe, but he quickly masked it behind a hard stare. When the judge finally called their daughter to the stand, the entire room went still. Even the air felt heavy. The girl walked forward slowly, each step echoing through the tense silence, as if the ground itself recognized the weight of what she was about to do. Teyana's pulse raced. Her stomach twisted painfully. She wanted to run up there, grab her daughter, and take her home where none of this existed. But she couldn't. She had to let her speak. When the judge asked the first question, "Is there anything you'd like to say regarding your father's involvement in recent events?" a hush fell across the room, so sharp it felt like time had stopped. The little girl looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she lifted her head, and what came out left every person in that courtroom stunned. She began softly, shakily, saying she loved both her parents deeply, but that love didn't erase the pain she felt. She talked about the arguments she'd overheard, the tension she felt in the walls, the quiet nights where she pretended everything was okay, even though it wasn't. She said she had seen things, conversations, actions, attitudes that changed how she saw her father. Things that made her question whether he cared about her the way a father should. Her voice trembled with truth, not anger, with heartbreak, not hatred. Every word felt like a blow to Iman's chest. His expression twisted from confusion to shock, from shock to discomfort, from discomfort to something softer, something like hurt. But he still couldn't speak. She went on, saying she always tried to protect both her parents, tried to keep peace where none existed, tried to pretend the world inside their home wasn't falling apart. But she was tired. She was tired of being the glue for two adults who could no longer hold themselves together. And then came the moment that unraveled the entire room. She looked directly at her father and said she didn't recognize him anymore. She missed the man who read her stories, who played with her, who laughed at her jokes, who made her feel safe. She missed the father he used to be. Before the arguments, before the stress, before the scandals and bitterness. She said she wasn't angry at him, she was heartbroken. And she wanted him to know that. The courtroom went completely silent. Even the judge paused, as if absorbing the rawness of the moment. Teyana bit her lip to stop herself from crying. She didn't want her daughter to see her pain and mistake it for guilt or regret. She wanted her to feel brave, proud, safe. But inside, Teyana's heart was shattering from the strength her child had shown. Then something shifted. Iman's eyes softened, his shoulders slumped. The tension in his face melted into something fragile. For the first time in a long time, he didn't look like a defensive ex-husband or a frustrated man. He looked like a father seeing the consequences of his actions reflected painfully in his child's eyes. And before anyone could breathe, the judge asked, "What outcome do you believe is best for your well-being?" Again, silence. The girl swallowed hard, her voice cracking as she said she wanted peace. She wanted stability. She wanted to stay with her mother, because that was where she felt safe right now, but she wanted her father to get help. Not because she hated him, but because she believed he could be better. Because she wanted him back, not the version sitting here in court, but the father she remembered in her heart. The answer hit everyone like a wave. Teyana covered her mouth, tears streaming. Iman closed his eyes, breathing deeply, finally letting the truth sink deep into the parts of him he had ignored. When the judge dismissed her, something unexpected happened. The little girl didn't run to her mother. She walked straight to her father. The room watched in stunned silence as she stood before him, tears glistening in her eyes. After a long moment, she leaned forward and hugged him. It wasn't a warm hug or a forgiving one. It was a wounded, trembling hug that carried pain, hope, fear, and love all at once. When she pulled back, she whispered something only he could hear. Whatever it was, it broke him. Teyana saw it in his eyes. After court, as cameras swarmed again, Teyana held her daughter tightly and rushed her to the car. Inside, the girl rested her head on her mother's shoulder, exhausted, emotionally drained, but lighter. Her truth had finally been spoken. Back in the courtroom, Iman sat alone long after everyone left, his hands covering his face, his breathing shaky. Because today wasn't about rumors or drama or pride. It was about the little girl whose heart he had unknowingly fractured. And that realization hit harder than any headline ever could. That night, the world exploded: online opinions, debates, sympathy, judgment. But inside Teyana's home, there were no arguments, no noise, just a quiet relief that the truth had finally come out. And maybe, just maybe, healing could begin. Not perfect healing, not easy healing, but real healing. The kind that starts with honesty and grows slowly, painfully, into something stronger, something better. And that is where this moment leaves them, a family standing in the space between heartbreak and hope, between who they were and who they might still become. Not healed, not whole, but finally honest. And sometimes honesty is the first step toward change.